Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So as you can see in our discussion of Sharia law, we have discussed the lawgiver, the divided breast, we discussed the acts of the morally obligated, and we have done now, consists of a demand, we have discussed the 4 types of demands. Can anybody mention to me the 4 demands? Silence in the crowd. Huh? Makruh, okay, 3. Makruh, 3. Haram, right, okay, good. Yeah, that's 4. Okay. So wajib, mandub, haram, and makruh, those are the 4 demands, okay? We now will be discussing the next category, which is the option, which is known, according to the Sharia terminology, as mubah. Mubah. Now, before we get into the option, we'd like to mention that the demands and the option together, these 2 categories together, are known as al-ahkam al-taklifiyah. Alright? Al-ahkam al-taklifiyah. Yes. The 4 demands that we mentioned, which were the wajib, the mandub, the makruh, and the haram, with the option, the mubah, those 5 rulings, okay, are collectively known as al-ahkam al-taklifiyah. Taklif, of course, we discussed, right, before its meaning, and we said the mukallaf was the one who he had which 2 qualities? He had reached by maturity and reasoning, right, okay, or sanity. So those 4 commands, 4 demands, and the options collectively are called al-ahkam al-taklifiyah. And the declarations, we'll be discussing a number of them, are known collectively as al-ahkam al-wad'iyyah. But that's just something just to throw out there. Okay, mubah, in its most simplest sense, there's not much really to discuss regarding mubah. It means that action or that object in the Sharia, which either it makes no difference whether you do it or perform it, or if you leave it. I mean, it's exactly the same, equal. Whether you commit it or you omit it, whether you do it or leave it, it's the same. It's an option. There is no ruling regarding it. Remember, the mustahab or the mandub was what? If you did the mustahab or the mandub, what would happen? You would be rewarded. If you left it, nothing. Okay, the makruh. If you did it, what would happen? Nothing. But if you left it, you'd be rewarded. Well, the mubah is neither. If you do it or if you leave it, if you forsake it, nothing. There's no matter required with it. Some other terms which are used by the scholars to refer to the mubah is al-halal. Al-halal is a term used by them, and I'll only write that in Arabic for those who want to. Also al-hil, which is derived from the same verbal root as al-halal, al-hil. Alright, these are terms, similar terms used by the scholars to mean mubah. Although, as we saw with the other terms, sometimes certain authors, certain scholars of Usul al Fiqh, or sometimes certain legal schools will use these terms with some different shades of meaning depending upon the terminology they use. So always when you read a legal book, you have to be aware of the terminology used in that text. Alright, now the matters which are mubah, okay, are of 2 types. We make the categories, we can give 2 general categories for that. The categories of the mubah. There are those matters which the Sharia has indicated to be mubah. And there are those matters which the Sharia has remained silent on, remained silent concerning, and therefore are default, are mubah, by default, are mubah by default. An example of something which the Sharia has indicated to be mubah would be that verse in Surah, we get the verse number for you. Surah, for instance, let us look at Surah Ma'idah, verse 1. The first verse of the 5th Surah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the behemothul an'am are halal for us. The behemothul an'am refer to 4 categories of animals, being sheep, goat, cattle, and camel. So here the Sharia has indicated that these animals are halal for us. Mubah. If one eats camel, does he receive a reward for it? No, okay. One does not want to eat camel, does he receive a punishment? Or no. It's mubah. There are other matters which the Sharia has remained silent regarding. There's no specific text, either in the Quran or in the Sunnah, which tell us that that matter is mubah. And by default, we consider it mubah because we have a principle in the Sharia, which will be discussed when we discuss the Sharia maxims in one later lesson, inshallah, that all matters are lawful, except what the Sharia indicates to be forbidden. And likewise, all acts of worship are forbidden, except what the Sharia indicates to be permissible. And we'll discuss that in a little bit greater detail in a later lesson, inshallah. But the point is that what the Sharia has, the categories of mubah, some of that the Sharia indicates to be mubah, and others the Sharia has been silent on, and so therefore by default are mubah. Those which the Sharia has indicated to be mubah, if later on the Sharia changes its ruling, this is known as, it falls under the category of naskh, or abrogation. When the Sharia changes its ruling concerning which was something which it indicated to be lawful, and then it says it's not. As far as that matter, which it was silent about, and then the ruling is changed, that is not considered an act of abrogation by the Sharia. Let me give an example. For instance, riba. Okay, usury is the normal English translation, but the term is riba is a little bit more comprehensive than the English term usury. There's verses which forbid in the Quran. Okay, prior to those verses, right, which forbid riba, it was mubah to take and receive interest. Okay? Now, when those verses were revealed, forbidding riba, is that then considered an abrogation? No, because there was no text ever in the Sharia which permitted the use of riba. Unlike intoxicants, khamr, where there was a text in the Sharia which forbade people to approach prayer while intoxicated. The understanding then, therefore, would be that to be intoxicated during times outside of the prayer time would be lawful, mubah. And so therefore, that change in ruling, when Allah finally forbade the use of khamr at any time, okay, is then therefore an abrogation of the command. It's a naskh. So it's important for us to know, is this matter mubah because the Sharia has indicated to be mubah, so then therefore if there's a change in the ruling, we say it's entitled abrogation, or was it something which was, the Sharia was initially silent on, and that's why it was mubah, so then later on if a commandment appeared in the Sharia, either forbidding or obligating that matter, we will not call it then to be an abrogation. Are there any questions regarding mubah? Yes.
There's a hadith of Rasulullah when he tells one of the Sahaba that, just in my words, that if he had sexual relations with his wife lawfully, then he's rewarded for it, and he wants to know why, because he wasn't doing it without earning the ibadah worship. He said, because if he did it unlawfully, he'd be punished for it. Therefore, simply if you do something lawfully, you'll get a reward for it. And if it is authentic, then what does it do with the other things, like eating food, for example, which is lawful, as opposed to not eating it, which is not eating unlawful food?
Okay. The point is here's the intention. The hadith is, the Prophet ﷺ did inform us that even in a person's sexual relations with his wife, he would receive a reward. The companion said someone would approach his, or fulfill his desires, and he would be rewarded. The Prophet ﷺ said, do you not see that if you were to place it in that which is forbidden, you would sin? Meaning that by placing it in that which is lawful for you, you would receive a reward. The understanding behind the hadith is that when that is done with the intention of protecting oneself from illicit sexual relations, or fulfilling one's desires lawfully, fulfilling his wife's desires lawfully, and so forth. And if that is the intention, then one receives reward. However, though, if one just does the act without any that type of intention or motivation with that, then it becomes a matter which is mubah, and one does not receive a reward for it. And the same thing with eating. If one eats in order to, with the intention, for instance, to preserve his strength so he can wage jihad, all right, this is one motivation, or to remain healthy so that he can worship Allah, then he receives a reward for his eating. And however, though, if he has no intention, just eats because it's a bodily function, right? Then he receives no reward for that. Yes, brother.
You mentioned that in the Sharia, everything in worship is forbidden except that which is allowed. But what is the term outside of the worship?
It's known as the mu'amalat, or interactions, human interactions.
Okay. Then the question is, one topic that comes up a great deal is what is bid'ah? What is bid'ah of worship, which is, I understand, to be reprehensible, and what is bid'ah outside of worship, bid'ah of the dunya, I guess you could say, which I understand to be mubah. And how do you define, what is reprehensible?
If the matter, bid'ah literally means that which is introduced. So if that matter which is introduced, it's sought by it to draw closer to Allah with that matter, it then becomes an act of innovation which is reprehensible. But if it's not sought by that to draw closer to Allah, then it is not reprehensible. So for instance, cars and airplanes and different types of garments like nylon and polyester, since they're not sought in and of themselves to worship Allah through them, they do not become acts of innovation which are reprehensible. But to add an additional rak'ah to Dhuhr prayer, saying I want to draw closer to Allah, so instead of praying 4, I'll pray 5 rak'ahs, that becomes an innovation which is reprehensible. That's just the general way of understanding. Okay, so I think now we understand the issue of mubah, right? And so therefore the 4 demands, right, and the option collectively are known as al-ahkam al-taklifiyya. Okay. So now what we're going to discuss the declarations. Yes, brother. Al-ahkam al-wad'iyya. And we'll be discussing these declarations now. I don't know if we'll be able to get all of them in this class, but we'll continue, inshallah, in the next lecture after Dhuhr prayer and lunch. In the most general sense, in order to distinguish between the two, the ahkam al-taklifiyya and the ahkam al-wad'iyya. Shut it off, just shut it off. No. Protect it. In order to, in the most general sense, the ahkam al-taklifiyya deals with those acts which pertain to our acts. The ahkam al-taklifiyya, right, pertains to actions that we do as mukallaf. Okay, that's what it's called, taklifiyya. Alright, listen to me, I probably didn't state that very clearly. The ahkam al-taklifiyya deals with acts of the mukallaf and the rulings regarding those acts. Any act that a human being does, any action or statement or belief, is going to fall into one of those 5 categories. It's either going to be obligatory, wajib, recommended, mustahab or mandub, mubah, optional, something which is disliked and blameworthy or makruh, or something which is forbidden, haram. So the whole sphere of human activity will fall into one of those 5 ahkam al-taklifiyah. Alright? There's no way it's going to fall out of them. Whatever is said by human beings, right? And of course, which human being here means the human being who is a mukallaf, right? Obviously the child and so forth is not entering into that. Now, the ahkam al-wad'iyyah, these declarations, are basically, you might think of them as signposts, as we'll see, indicators used by the Sharia toward making some sort of ahkam al-taklifiyah, and that will become clear. So the ahkam al-wad'iyyah does not refer to these declarations by the Sharia, does not refer to something that the mukallaf does, but rather it's something that the Sharia has placed in order to indicate or make a declaration regarding a certain action done by the mukallaf. And this will become clear for us in a second, once we look at some of the examples of the ahkam al-wad'iyyah. Alright, the first of the ahkam al-wad'iyyah, which we'll be discussing, is cause. And this is known as at-Tamimi. Now let me give some examples. Okay, pronounce. Alright, these are some examples to help us understand this concept of a sabab. Pronouncement of divorce results in marital separation. The declining of the sun results in the zuhur prayer. The possessing of the nisab, which is a minimal amount of wealth, and the passage of a year upon that wealth results in the obligation of zakat. All of these matters over here on the left side are known as plural as asbab, but are each a sabab for this Sharia ruling. Okay? So these are the rulings. I mean, marital separation, divorce, right? Zuhur prayer, zakat. And these rulings would fall under one of these 5 categories. But these are causes that lead to those matters. An example which we can find from the Quran, especially with the Zuhur prayer, is Surah 17, verse 78, whereby Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَقِمَ الصَّلَاةِ لِدُلُوكِ الشَّمْسِ, establish the prayer for the declining of the sun. So Allah has linked the prayer to the sun's decline. And so therefore the sun's decline is a cause. Alright. Now, whenever one of these causes occur, this results in it. Whether you intended it or not. Okay? Whenever you pronounce divorce, it results in marital separation, whether you intended to divorce or not. And that's why the hadith mentions that 3 matters, whether you do it in a jesting or in a serious, results in whether it's divorce. The sun declines. Whether you intend to pray or not, the prayer has become obligatory. Okay? You possess the nisab, which is the minimum amount of wealth. All right? And a year has passed upon that wealth. Zakah becomes obligatory, whether you intend to, pay the zakah or not. So once any of these causes occur, the result of that cause, the Sharia, occurs irrespective if you intend to fulfill that or not. And so therefore we may define the sabab, to give it a definition, as an apparent fixed quality which affirms a judgment in that the lawgiver has linked that judgment to it. That's the definition of sabab or cause. No, we're talking here about, who says qadr? Raise hand. No, because remember we're talking about what? Law here. Okay, remember in the first lesson we said Allah is the judge in 3 matters: the sense of laws, okay, the commands and prohibitions, in the sense of his decrees, which is a qadr, right, and in the sense of the way he judges us on the day of judgment. And our whole discussion here on Usul al Fiqh is regarding what? The commands and prohibitions of the law. Those things which you can do out of your own volition. So Allah's decrees doesn't fall, this does not refer to that. And so therefore a cause in the legal sense, or a sabab, is an apparent, it means it's something that's not hidden, it's something which is apparent, and it's fixed, it's determined, quality which affirms a judgment, in that the lawgiver has linked that judgment to it. So, marital separation or divorce is a judgment which has been linked to the pronouncement of divorce. Whenever there's a pronouncement of divorce, this occurs. The Dhuhr prayer, has been linked to the decline of the sun. Whenever the sun declines, Dhuhr prayer becomes, the time for it comes in. Zakah is a judgment which has been linked to the possession of a nisab and the passage of a year on that wealth. Whenever somebody has the minimal amount of wealth in the nisab and a year passes on it, then the obligation for zakah comes about. Okay? For instance, qisas, right? The law of retaliation, right? Has been linked to murder. Okay? Whenever this judgment is linked to this. So whenever murder occurs, qisas is warranted in the Sharia. You can execute that person for taking someone's life. And murder, of course, in the Sharia sense means what? That just for the sake of knowing, it means to kill someone with an instrument that normally results in death, and to intend that the person killed is ma'soom, which means his blood is unlawful to shed, blood unlawful to shed, and for the killer is a mukallaf, which we know what mukallaf means. So, that's what we mean by murder, just to give the Sharia term. So, okay. If you kill somebody with an instrument which normally kills, results in death, intending to kill him, and the person killed is ma'soom, means his blood is unlawful to be shed, and you are a mukallaf. So whenever this results, qisas can occur. This is the cause, this is the effect. I see faces that seem to be at loss, huh? Is this clear, or any questions? Okay. Now, there's another term which is similar to a sabab, which is al-illah. I'd like to write it here, al-illah. Alright? Many scholars will use the term as-sabab and al-illah interchangeably in their writings. However, some of them will make a distinction, which we want to just mention, even if it's just in passing. And al-illah, they would define it as when the reasoning behind the cause is apparent, and sabab when the reasoning behind the cause is unapparent. That murder results in qisas is apparent what's the wisdom behind that, okay? You take a life, your life is taken. We understand that. I mean, it's understood. And so therefore, these scholars would describe murder to be the illah of qisas. That prayer is done when the sun declines at dhuhr time. What is the wisdom behind that? It's something which is unapparent to us. And there's really no way that we know. So those scholars which make a distinction would say then therefore the decline of the sun from its meridian is the seventh of dhuhr prayer. So you see how they're using the distinction in terms over here? If the wisdom, if the reasoning behind the cause is known, then they will refer to it as illah. But if the reasoning is unknown, unapparent, they will refer to it as seventh. Other scholars just use the term interchangeably. They call it seventh, they call it illah. They make no distinction between the two terms. So again, when you're reading a legal textbook, you would have to know what the author is, reasoning. Yes, and that would be like murder, for qisas. Qisas is the, taking someone's life to cause murder. I mean, the reasoning here is very clear, right? Or the pronouncement of divorce, right, leads to marital separation. I mean, it's, very clear reasoning. But the decline of the sun resulting in dhuhr prayer, I mean, why is it the decline of the sun? Why is it, the sun reaching the meridian, for instance? So they call that sabab. Anyway, that's just something to know. I mean, the most important thing for us to know in this aspect is that one of the, going back over here to the Sharia law, is the divine address that pertains to the act of the morally obligated and consists of a demand, an option, and declaration. This is one example of a declaration, cause, where Allah has declared that this cause, right, the lawgiver, Allah declares that this cause results in this ruling, this law. Okay? No, it refers to the cause. It refers, illah and sabab is the cause, okay? But they make a distinction, some scholars, where they will use illah when they know the reasoning behind the cause, and sabab when they do not know the reasoning behind the cause, as a term, okay? But they both refer to the cause itself. Okay. So the illah, if we're following that terminology, of dhuhr prayer is the decline of the sun, and the sabab of qisas is murder. Oh, yes. Yes, sabab when the reasoning behind it, excuse me, it's the other way around, yes. The illah of qisas is murder, Somebody's paying attention at least. So the end of Qisas is murder, and the seventh for Zuhur prayer is the decline of the sun. And then other scholars, they would use the term interchangeably. They say the end of Salah is Zuhur, the seventh of Salah is Zuhur. Okay, let's take another declaration by the Sharia. All right, the next one is al-mani', which means impediment, we can say in the English language, impediment. And it's the exact opposite of sabab, or illa, cause, right? And so therefore, it is an apparent fixed quality that when affirmed prevents that ruling. Okay, let's give an example again with the murder. We said that murder is the sabab for a qisas. If we later find out that the murderer, okay, is the father, okay, and the one who was murdered was his son or daughter, then fatherhood becomes an impediment, a mani' for qisas. Because the Prophet ﷺ forbade the application of the qisas upon the parent killing the child. A parent who kills their child will not be under qisas. So then we would say that fatherhood is the mani' or the impediment for the qisas. Okay? Let's think of another example. The khitbah, not khutbah, but khitbah, is the proposal of marriage. And this results in marriage, nikah. So you propose marriage, right? Proposal. The khitbah, and it results in marriage. This is the sabab. This is the cause. This is the result. Excuse me. This is the cause. This is the result. We later find out that the woman was in her iddah, her waiting period. Let's say she just was divorced, and that waiting period had not been completed yet. Or her husband, her first husband, had passed away, and she was still in the waiting period. So, iddah, that waiting period, becomes a mani', an impediment to marriage. And so therefore, this apparent fixed quality, when affirmed, prevents that ruling. So we would say that marriage did not occur, that contract was not valid. because that apparent fixed quality of iddah prevented that ruling. And over here, there's a qisas, right? That apparent fixed quality, fatherhood, prevented the fulfillment of that ruling of qisas. Now, let's think for a moment. Let's see. Let us imagine that a manner is not present. An impediment is not present. In other words, the one who did the killing is not the father of the one who was killed. Does that necessitate that the ruling will be fulfilled? Huh? Yes? No?
No.
Okay, who said no and why? Yes?
Because it's left at the option of the family of the person who's killed.
Well, that's true. That's true, but in a more fundamental sense. Right, or no, there might be other reasons why that ruling would not be fulfilled. For instance, it might not be a qisas because maybe, even though he was not his father, he might have been insane. No, I tried to use the word killing. I'm sorry. Maybe I confused you by the example. Okay, sorry. All right, let's say shedding of blood. All right, let's make it a little bit more general. Okay, so blood is shed. I apologize for that. Blood is shed, and so therefore we know that the one who shed the blood is not the father. Does that necessitate, right, that the qisas would be applied? No, because and likewise, the woman was not in iddah. Right? Does that necessitate that the marriage is a valid contract? No, because there could be another reason why the marriage is not valid, right? She is his sister through, fostering, right? Through suckling, okay? Yes? Seven.
Yeah, so it's a clause that resulted in the judgment. So that doesn't hold entirely out of it, does it?
Let me just hold it entirely out.
Well, and here you said the shedding of the blood doesn't always result in the death. Well, in that case, you also say that's not the sabab of qisas then.
No, yeah, shedding of blood is not a sebab of qisas.
Right, so it's not, okay, right.
Right, it's murder that's the sebab of qisas. But I just want you shedding of blood just to show that just because an impediment does not exist, it doesn't mean by, converse, right, that the sebab is there, because there might be more than one impediment. I mean, when we say that something is an impediment to a ruling, right, there might be a number of impediments. And so therefore, just because one impediment is not there, doesn't mean that another impediment is not there. Just because an impediment is not there, doesn't mean that the cause has been fulfilled. And so therefore, the opposite is, while it is true that an impediment or a mana, when existing, affirmed, prevents that ruling, the opposite of that, when it's not there, does not necessarily mean that that ruling exists. Okay, is that clear, or some confusion too? Okay. Yes, brother.
Let's go back. We said that the sabab was, once the sabab has occurred, then the action must occur. Does that say, for example, somebody does zina, then they must be killed or whatever? Because then, when the woman came to Rasulullah and confessed to that, she was given the chance to just to leave the matter and not for the hudud or punishment to be taken out from her, or that been abrogated now if somebody says that they must be killed.
No, there's two issues here, okay? The act of zina, right, when done by a person who is in ihsan, which refers to the state where they are in a lawful marriage, okay, whereby which they can receive sexual gratification, okay, and they commit illicit sexual intercourse. Makes that person is the cause for its stoning, okay? Now, the application of that ruling, the actual stoning of that person, needs a number of matters. Either a confession is a cause for that, okay? Or 4 witnesses who see the individual in that act, all right? So it's one thing to say that zina is the sebab for stoning to death. And that is a valid statement, okay? But the actual application of the stoning, right, either is by confession, is the cause for the actual application, the fulfillment of that ruling, or for witnesses. So it's not abrogated, but there's a distinction by saying that the ruling is affirmed for that individual in the actual application of that ruling by the judicial authority, the judge. All right. Let's take another example, okay, of a manner, okay. A person commits zina, right? Stoning to death is the cause, okay. We find out the person lives in a non-Muslim land, right? By the fact that he lives in a non-Muslim land is the manner, the impediment for the application of that law. Somebody's had a question. Excuse me? If there's no confession, then that might be. Or, for instance, let's make it something which is better, right? One of the 4 witnesses, right? There's something wrong with his testimony. That's a little bit more clearer, okay? So then, therefore, his testimony is discounted. That would be the manner for that, okay? Instead of being just non-existent initially. Yeah. Did I say stoning was the cause? Stoning is the judgment, the ruling. Okay. So that's fine. Okay. Let us take the 3rd declaratory law now. I think we just have about 10 minutes, right? 5 minutes? Okay. I think we have Salah right behind us, so we need to run the chat. Well, so okay, so we'll do this one and I'll be good stuff. All right, the 3rd declaratory law is what is known as shout. All right, which might be translated as condition or stipulation. And we may define it as that which its absence necessitates the absence of that ruling or law, right? But its presence does not necessitate the existence or absence of that ruling. Okay, so a shart or a stipulation or condition, you can say in English, is that declaration which the lawgiver has placed, which when it's absent necessitates the absence of that ruling. That ruling does not exist, but its presence does not necessitate the existence or absence of that ruling. And let us give an example of a stipulation. Covering the awrah, which for the male refers to from his knees, right, to his waist, is a stipulation, a shart for prayer. Now, so if the awra is uncovered, right, so this condition is absent, means that the prayer, the ruling for prayer is absent. But let's say that the awra is covered. Does that mean necessarily that the ruling of prayer is fulfilled or absent? Okay, why? You said no, it's why. Yes, no, the covering shoulders, yes, and that's a command, but we're talking about the conditions here. Yes, brother.
Because there are many conditions which validate prayer.
Absolutely, because there are many conditions, okay? Among which is facing the qibla, among which is the entering of the time, among which is the purification, the wudu, right? So just because you fulfill this condition, this stipulation, doesn't necessarily mean that this ruling has come in effect. Because there are other stipulations, as was mentioned. But once this stipulation or condition has become absent, that this ruling definitely, and this is not there, and this ruling definitely is not there. Alright? Now, these conditions are of two types, two categories we may divide them into. And that is those conditions which pertain to that act becoming incumbent, incumbent, or obligatory, since that was the term I used earlier, and those acts becoming valid. Okay, so let me put two conditions for prayer. The entering of the prayer time and the facing of the qibla. Here, these two conditions or stipulations of the prayer. Which one is a condition for validity, and which one is a condition for the incumbent or the obligatory nature of that act? Yes, brother.
The first one, the entering of the time, is incumbent, whereas facing the very valid.
Right. Okay. They're both stipulations for the prayer, but the act becomes, one is a stipulation or a condition for it to make it obligatory. When the time for prayer comes in, that action becomes obligatory. The other one is a condition or a stipulation for its validity. And so therefore, it might be obligated, the prayer time might have been come in, but you're not facing the qibla, so the act is not valid. Alright? So when we look at the stipulations for any act of worship or for any contract between two human beings, like buying and selling, divorce, marriage, whatever, we look at the conditions. There are some conditions which make the act obligatory, and there are other conditions which make the act valid. Obligatory or incumbent, the word used is wujub, from which we have our word wajib. Remember we did wajib, right? And the word valid, I'll write it in Arabic for those brothers who want it, is sihha, and we will have sihha, and we will have a term which we will come to shortly with the next term, which we'll do in the next class, sahih, which is another declaratory law. Let's see, what else do I want to say before we... Okay. May I go ahead and write this? Okay, what are the three declaratory laws that we've discussed thus far? Sabab, okay. Man'at, alright. Shart. We'll just put cause, impediment, and mind you, condition. There's a principle in the Sharia. If you're going to say that something is a cause, an impediment, or a condition for any ruling, you must have an evidence from the Quran or the Sunnah. You cannot, say that something is a sabab right, for something. Something is an impediment for a ruling. Something is a condition or stipulation for a ruling without having an evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah. And so therefore, the scholars determine the causes, the impediments, and the conditions for the various rulings by something which is known as istiqra'. Istiqra', which means that you go through all the texts of the Quran, all the verses, right, and all the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and you look at, okay, what are all the conditions for prayer? What are all the impediments for prayer? What are all the causes for prayer? Then you go through them again for the zakah, and for the fasting, and for marriage, and for buying and selling, and for all the different human activities or acts of worship which the Sharia has a law for. And so therefore, sometimes the scholars will differ in determining, right, the causes, the impediments, and the conditions, depending upon how good their istiqra' was. Because some scholars might see a cause, which is other scholars might have not noticed, or might argue that it's not a cause. They might see an impediment, which other scholars might have not noticed, or might not see it as an impediment. They might see a condition which other scholars have not noticed, or might not see as a stipulation for that act of worship or for that contract in that human interaction. Okay, I guess we can take a couple questions and we'll adjourn for this morning. Istiqra', how to define it? There's a term in the English language. Let me see. What is it? Anyway, if it comes to me, I'll mention it. But what it means is to, and there's a term, because it exists also in logic. Induction, right? Induction by numeration. Induction by numeration. I think that's the equivalent, English equivalent to it. Huh? I think that's the English equivalent to it. Yeah, if somebody knows logic and knows a better term, then maybe it's by enumeration. By enumeration.
Is it induction or deduction?
Huh? I think that's what the debate was. Is it induction or deduction? I think it's deduction. Anyway, somebody can look up in a dictionary and come back. Just istiqra' is a lot easier. One word, never want to stuff for things. All right, brothers. Inshallah ta'ala. I think I'll take it for this morning. Inshallah, after we'll I guess there's an announcement. Jazakumullah khair.